I've been in digital marketing for 20 years now. I get asked all the time by marketing managers, by business owners, by people who are just starting out, just ask me, how to do marketing? What's marketing? What do I pay attention to? What numbers do I look at? So I want to make a video because I think there's a lot of noise out there around this topic and want to give you what I think is an honest answer. And part of the honest answer is looking back at my own path and saying, okay, what would I do differently if I had to start over knowing what I know now? So I broke this down into 9 steps, and I'm going to go through all of them. So some of these are going to feel uncomfortable because they're the opposite of what a lot of people are telling you what to do. But in my experience, this is what builds real career, real results. Let's go. So step 1, I think this is the most important one, honestly, is understanding that strategy moves the needle, not tactics. I know that sounds something like you've seen on a LinkedIn post, but hear me out because most people genuinely get this wrong, and it costs them years. When you're starting out, or even when you've been doing this for a while, it's really easy to get obsessed over the tactical stuff. Like what's the right keyword density? What's the right bidding strategy? What's the right hook format working on Facebook here? I'm not saying those things don't matter, they do, but the tactics change constantly. An algorithm update comes out, and half of what you're going to do is different now. What was working 6 months ago might be completely irrelevant today. What doesn't change is understanding why people do what they do. Human behavior. The way people search, the way people make decisions, the way trust gets built over time. That stuff is pretty consistent. And I've seen this play out in my own work. The clients who are winning long term, it's not because they found some secret tactic. It's because they have a clear positioning. The product fits the market they're going after. And so most standard marketing approaches work for them. Meanwhile, I've seen businesses dump a ton of money to ads and SEO and get nothing because the strategy was off from the beginning. So if I would start over, I would spend real time at the beginning just understanding marketing from a strategic level. Why do businesses invest in it? What does the customer want? What problem are you solving? Before I touch a single platform or tool, I want to have a clear answer to those questions. I think a lot of people really skip that and end up just chasing tactics forever without really understanding what they're trying to accomplish. I think that's a mistake. Step 2, train yourself to read intent. So step 2 is something I didn't fully appreciate early on, but it's become one of the most useful things I do, and it kind of ties into the strategy piece. It's learning to read intent, not just what someone is saying, but what they mean. So here's a real example I use pretty regularly. There's a meaningful difference between someone who's searching for marketing solutions and someone who's searching for marketing services. Those two people are different avatars. One of them is probably a senior decision maker who's evaluating options at a pretty high level. The other one who is already in buying mode and they're just looking for someone to hire. Same general topic, but totally different approach. Once you start seeing that, you start seeing it everywhere. In keyword research, in clients, and how clients phrase things on calls, and how prospects ask questions before they decide to work with you, you get this sense for what someone wants versus what they said. And I think this is one of those skills that people don't really talk about enough because it's hard to teach directly. You just kind of develop it over time by paying close attention, by just getting enough reps in, by just developing your instincts. If I were starting over, I'd be intentional about building it from the beginning, just training myself to ask, okay, what does this person mean? Not what do they say, but what are they really looking for? What do they really want? Step 3, this is the one where I think I give advice that a lot of people would push back on. Pick one channel, go deep on it. Genuinely ignore everything else for a while. Someone decides they want to learn digital marketing and they're trying to learn Google ads, Facebook ads, SEO, email, TikTok, all at the same time. And what happens is they end up knowing a little bit about a lot of things and not enough about any of it to get real results for anyone. And that's the toughest spot to be in when you're trying to get clients or to get hired. For me, I'd start with SEO. And the reason I go there is SEO forces you to understand a lot of things at once. It forces you to understand how people search and why. It forces you to think about content, intent, and about what makes someone stay on a page or lead. You can't just game it with the tactic. You have to actually understand the user. And I think that understanding transfers to every other channel you'll ever work on. I'll give you a concrete example of what I mean. Right now, I manage Facebook ads for roofing companies. And when I'm trying to figure out what hooks to use those ads, I'll pull from my SEO research skills. I'll look at what keywords are trending, what people are searching for in that space or in that city, and then I'll predict those are probably the topics and the angles that are going to resonate in ads as well. If I notice that in Houston, there's a lot of people searching for storm repair and they're using the words roof replacement, storm repair, I might think, okay, this is the type of language, this is the mindset people are in. They're looking for a brand new roof. They just got hit with a storm. I want to convey that in my Facebook ads message. My SEO thinking is doing the work inside a completely different channel. That's what going really deep on one thing gives you. You can develop a lens that you can apply everywhere. And truthfully, the results back this up, right? We've gotten over 7,000 first page keyword rankings. One e-com client went from 12K per month in SEO revenue to 132 per month. And truthfully, the results back this up. A criminal law firm was seeing a 30% increase in traffic and a 40% increase in calls within 90 days. Those kind of results come from really understanding one thing well, not being decent at 5 things. Step 4, Do real work as soon as you can. Step 4. And I think this one is probably the thing that made the biggest difference in my own development. You have to do real work for businesses as soon as you possibly can. And I mean real, not a practice account, not a hypothetical project, something with actual stakes. So here's kind of where that comes from me personally. In 2017, I bought a one-way ticket to Vietnam. I didn't have a clear plan. I had 2 months of savings, and I basically forced myself into a position where I had to figure things out. I picked up 2 part-time jobs when I got there, built up a little savings. Then in February 2018, I lost both of them. So now I'm in Vietnam, 2 months of runway, and I have to grind my way out of it. So I started freelancing, picking up whatever work I could find, working on real client campaigns, dealing with real problems, real budgets, real expectations. Yes, some of it was messy, some of it went sideways, but I was learning at a pace that you just can't replicate by watching tutorials. You know what I mean? When a client is waiting for results and something isn't working, you got to figure it out fast. There's no other option. And I think that's an environment that accelerates growth, where there are real consequences and real feedback. So whatever stage you're at, find a way to get into that environment as quickly as you can. The reps that you get in from real work are worth a lot more than the reps you get in from a course. Step 5, tie everything back to revenue. Step 5, and this is the lesson I had to learn the hard way. Everything you do has to tie back to revenue. I know that sounds obvious, but I think a lot of marketers, myself included, early on get caught up in the metrics that feel good but don't really matter much about the business. Like traffic going up is great, rankings improving is great, impressions, click-through rates, all that is great. But clients genuinely do not care about those numbers in isolation. They work in the beginning, they show progress for sure, but you got to start getting to revenue pretty quickly and soon. And how to really internalize that and change the way I approach everything because of it. So now the 3 things I try to stay focused on, and these come from real mistakes I made running the agency, are: first, make sure the traffic you're going after is relevant to the target audience. Not all traffic moves the business forward. Second, keep your focus on strategies that tie back to revenue. If you can't draw a straight line from what you're doing to what the business earns, that's a problem. Third, focus on needle-moving action items, not busy work, not things that look productive. And when you communicate like this with clients, when you walk into a meeting and you're talking about their business outcomes, not just your campaign metrics, the relationship changes completely. They know that you understand them, that you are looking out for their interests, that you connect with them. That's how you build the kind of trust that keeps clients around for 5 or more years. Step 6, learn how all the pieces fit together. So step 6, and this comes a little later in the progression, is learning to see the full ecosystem, all the different channels and pieces connect to each other. Because no channel really operates on its own, right? SEO feeds into paid, paid feeds into email, email feeds into retargeting, and so on. And the businesses that are winning are the ones that understand how all of this fits together, not just the ones who are really good at one isolated piece. And I think the cross-domain thinking is something that's underrated. A lot of what I pull from in SEO, I apply to paid. And a lot of what I understand about human behavior for managing client relationships, I apply to how I think about content. You develop these in each other and how, if you let it. The other piece of this is learning to see the whole business. So for example, if I'm thinking about recommending a price increase for a client, I'm not just thinking about what that does for revenue. I'm thinking about what this does for the sales team's motivation and the commission opportunity. I'm thinking about, okay, how does this affect operations? How does this affect fulfillment? How does this affect conversion rates? How does it affect pipeline velocity? The downstream effects. And I think a lot of their marketers don't naturally think that way, particularly when they're early in their career. But developing that bird's eye view is what makes you genuinely valuable, not just as a marketer, but someone who understands how businesses work. Step 7, learn to communicate like a strategist. Step 7, and I'd say this one determines your ceiling more than almost anything else. Learn to communicate like a strategist, not someone who just manages a channel. So when you're earlier in your career, you naturally talk in tactics. You're explaining keyword density, you're bidding strategies, ad formats, and there's nothing wrong with that. You need to know that stuff. But most clients and business owners are not going to connect with that language. They're thinking about their business goals, their revenue, and their growth. The shift happens when you learn to speak in outcomes and learn to prepare for the conversations at that level. I'll tell you what this looks like for me practically. Before every client meeting, I spend a significant amount of time making sure I'm not just walking in with data. I'm walking in with a story about what the data means. Why are things going up? Why do we see a dip? Why do we have a spike last month? What does all this tell us about, and what should we do next? That level of preparation and clarity is what builds real trust. I've had clients with us for 5+ years. We charge between $3K to $10K plus per month. The reason those relationships hold is not just the results. It's that the clients feel that we understand their business, that we genuinely care about their outcomes. That's what you want to build towards. And you can start working on that communication skill way earlier than most people do. Step 8, build real systems and learn to train people. Step 8. This one's for anyone who's thinking beyond just doing the work themselves. Build real systems and learn how to train people. So I think I made a Pretty significant mistake early in my agency. I delegated too fast and then went too long without really checking in or managing properly. I basically handed things off, assumed people would figure it out. The work suffered because of it. And I think that's a mistake a lot of agency owners and business owners make because they delegate before they build the systems that make delegation work. What I have found is that you can't really delegate something well unless you've done it yourself enough to understand what good looks like. So now when I'm building out a process, like recently I put together SOPs for keyword research and on-page SEO, I'll build those SOPs by doing the work myself first, record the process, and then making the training materials, and then you hand it off. So within a day of rolling that out, a team member had gone through it, done our first round of work, and then sent me an update. So within a day of rolling that out, the team member had gone through it, done her first round of work, and then sent me an update. That's how it's supposed to work. And on training people specifically, I don't think the right approach is just handing someone an SOP waiting. I think you learn the fastest when you're in a real situation with real stakes, making real mistakes. So I'll regularly put team members in situations before they feel ready, like having a junior person lead a client meeting before they've done it before. And I'll let them just run it. And yeah, it's uncomfortable for them, but it's supposed to be because that's where learning comes from. And they're going to learn way more from that experience than they would from weeks of passive studying. You figure it out by doing, not by watching someone else do it. Step 9, think in terms of the big picture. It's kind of what all the other steps are building towards. You have to learn to think in terms of the big picture consistently in everything you do. The marketers I've seen plateau, I've seen them, a lot of them over the years, they plateau because they get really good at executing inside one lane and they never develop the ability to zoom out and see how everything fits together. They're great at execution, but they're not strategists. And the thing I use to constantly combat that in my own work is the 80-20 rule. 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your activities. The job is to figure out the 20%, what that 20% is, and put most of your energy there. Which sounds simple, but in practice, it's pretty hard because the other 20%, the busy work, the minor optimizations, the things that feel productive but don't really move anything, that stuff is really easy to fill your days with. So every week with my team, we identify one non-negotiable priority per person. Not a list of 10 things, but one thing that we know is the needle mover for that week, and we protect that. And I think what's underneath all of this, underneath the 80-20, underneath the strategy over tactics, underneath all 9 of these steps is pattern recognition. Learning to look at a campaign, a client, a market, and quickly see what's happening and what needs to change. That's what develops over time when you do the real work, stay curious, and keep learning across different domains. And I think that's the thing that separates people who stay stuck from the ones who keep growing. So that's the 9 steps. That's what I would do if I were starting over, knowing what I know now. And look, I know it's not the sexy answer. It's not follow these 3 hacks and make this amount of money per month. But if you stick with this approach and you're patient with the process, you'll end up in a really solid place. And truthfully, it usually will happen faster than you think, but you got to commit to it. The kind of place where you're genuinely valuable to businesses and you have the confidence that comes from knowing what you're doing. So if this was useful, please drop a comment. Let me know which one hit you the most. And if you want to go deeper on SEO strategy or how I run an agency day-to-day, that's kind of what this channel is about. So I'll see you on the next one.